Hello, everyone. It's Arlene Smith, and you are listening to Healing the Hearts of Healthcare, the Leadership Edition. So if you are here, that means that either you're a leader or you have an interest in being a leader, and you lead a team of people that are responsible to provide care. And that's why you're here, because I am so passionate about this message that as healthcare workers coming off the pandemic, which I like to call the great sadness, we need to heal our hearts. We need to learn ways to heal from the pain and the suffering that we went through. Now, listen, I, during the time of the pandemic, was working as a consultant in leadership and engagement, but I was also a healthcare frontline worker who pushed a med cart in a small nursing home community that was local to me here in New Jersey. And I know firsthand what those experiences that people went through, our healthcare workers, was like. In fact, for me, I journaled those experiences in my journal. And I have to say, at that time, I really wasn't prepared to understand why I was compelled to write those messages down from my day and my experiences. I just had this feeling like it was important. And now as I look back and I read those entries and I see the themes of the chaos, the pain, the suffering, the sadness, I like to describe it as I feel as if when I go back and I look at the past from this lens of what happened through story and storytelling, that I feel as if there were layers of my heart that were just slowly being peeled away. And over time, there were these spaces in my heart where it very naturally became a home and a place for what I call the great sadness to settle in. And as a healthcare worker, we have to think about this. I mean, you're a leader of people. That means you have been given the opportunity to lead and motivate and inspire and direct and manage your teams. That means by its nature, it is a duty and a responsibility to care for the people that you are managing. And I know that seems foreign to people sometimes, but again, I'm going to remind you, you're in the field of healthcare. And the people that you provide leadership to, they turn around and provide care and services to those patients and those residents and those people that need to be healed. And so if they have a great experience, even in their most difficult times, then chances are they are going to push that same feeling out to those that they care. But if they don't have a good experience, if they don't have leaders who are engaged with them, that understand them, that are there to help them and support them and guide them, and sometimes it's as simple as just to be a listening ear. I mean, think about the characteristics of leadership. One of the ones where I see, even when I was a consultant and now I'm an educator, even I see this everywhere. It doesn't even matter that it's not within our field. It's just in our world. People have an inability to truly listen, to be present when they're having a conversation with another person. And sometimes I believe this comes from a place, not that we're not interested in what somebody has to say. I think it secretly comes from this place that we are so busy in the work that we're doing. We are so connected to what we have to get done as leaders that we're not even thinking that this is something that might be important to another person. And I've coached a lot of leaders. I've had conversations with a lot of leaders around the importance of listening and presence. And I'm going to remind all of you as leaders, this is a core leadership competency, right? It's not your ability to partially listen, right? You need to fully engage in listening, and you need to take that step back and make sure that that listening includes the way someone's not only speaking, but the way they're interacting with you. It's the verbal and the nonverbal body language that goes into all that. It's going to help you identify where the support is needed. And truth of the matter is sometimes people just need to vent. They come to you to offload a lot of information. And one of the easiest strategies you can do as a leader is just to ask that person, hey, do you need me to do anything for this? Because I'd be happy to. Or are you just here because you need a listening ear? And that will tell you which direction to go. And sometimes as a leader, we forget how important that is. I know when I was starting out in leadership, I was very fortunate to have extraordinary mentors. And you all know who you are because I worked with you every day. And you helped to guide me, and you saw something in me, and you took the time out of your day to have conversations with me, to make me self-reflect and to make me think and to look at situations differently. And that shaped me as a leader, because I don't think that I would have been where I am today had I not had those experiences. I probably would have been like many leaders that are just siloed focus on what I need to do in the course of my day. But again, in the work that you do, you lead and manage teams of people who are responsible, directly responsible for providing care and services to people that need to be healed. And so that interaction is so critically important. I can't help but think about a time when I had a team member that reported into me, and this was very early in my leadership career. And so they would come to me in the mornings. It wasn't every morning, but I would say maybe about 3 times a week, come into my office and stand at my doorway, right? And they would start spouting off everything that was going wrong. And sort of as a leader who hadn't developed the core leadership competencies, I wasn't thinking anything other than, I need to spring into action. That's what they hired me to do. I'm a leader. I'm going to solve this for you. And it wasn't until I worked with that mentor that they said to me, why do you do that all the time? You're always springing into action, trying to solve things without even knowing if this is what that person wanted you to do. I mean, think about that. How does that change the way a person thinks about my ability to be empowered to take action, right? If I am a direct report and I'm coming to my boss and I'm telling you all of my problems and everything that's going wrong, and I immediately spring into action to try to save the day and be that superhero boss that is not going to take any opportunity for granted. But I've removed the ability for you to do that as a direct report. And I want you to think secretly over time how those messages just keep funneling back and forth in that person's head. It can be a game changer. And then it becomes very easy for us as leaders to say, well, I just can't get them to do anything on their own. Thank goodness I'm here, because they would never be able to do it without me. And so part of this journey of healing the hearts of healthcare, the leadership edition, is really to sit back and reflect and think about the practices that you do every single day. And to think about them from the lens of not just you as a leader, but what do those messages convey? How do they make your teams feel? What can you do differently to connect to people? Because if you haven't figured it out, we are living in a world where we are all moving way too fast. It's a byproduct of the world that we live in. I joke all the time about when I was a young child, I loved watching the Jetsons as a cartoon. I love the Jetsons and I love the Flintstones, and talk about like two totally opposite sort of parts of the world, right? Our very earliest beginnings and our future. It was like the perfect time to be a child and to watch those things. But I remember watching George Jetson and his family, and I just, in discovery and sort of imagination, would get to this place of saying, I cannot wait for the future to be like this. And yes, we do not have flying cars yet, but we have amazing technology that really streamlines the way that we all work, right? That means your team members and you as a leader. But yet we are still incredibly busy and we are fumbling around, right? And we're really wondering, why can't it just be a little bit better? So we're going to talk about so many things in this podcast every single week, but consider this your call to action. You're here because you have to imagine that this is where you need to be at this point in time. Just like when I look back in my journals and I read the painful writings that sort of help me relive all of the emotions and the pain and the suffering that as a nurse I was forced to do because we had to care for people in a pandemic where the knowledge was limited and we weren't able to even have an understanding of what we needed to do in the day-to-day. Everything was brand new. And for so many of us in healthcare, that channeled an extreme hypersensitive level of stress. I mean, I don't know about you, but I work best in environments where I believe that my skills, my gifts, and my talents can be applied with logic and reasoning, right? That I can pull these little tricks out of my bag and say, this may work for you. But with the pandemic, that was very different. And for so many people, it caused stress. For so many people, the amount of suffering that they witnessed and experienced was life-altering for them. It peeled away those pieces of their heart. And they are our caregivers who were designed to heal people. So you as a leader, this is your opportunity to help your team members with their own healing. Listen, they may not even realize that they need to be healed. They might be walking around practicing in a way and not even realizing that the emotions and the experiences that you are seeing coming out of them is directly related to the experiences they were meant to live through. And that might be for some people things that go back to that small inner child. And so it is a huge opportunity, but I'm an optimist. And I believe I was put on this planet to help change the way people view healthcare. Listen, I know this to be true. I went into the field and became a professional nurse because I knew that this was what I was designed to do. It took an act of caring for my grandmother. Now, my mom was a nurse. She grew up actually. She wasn't a nurse to begin with. She started out as a CNA, a nurse's aide, way back in the day after she married my father and started having children. And again, my father was a shoemaker. He is a shoemaker. He still works. He has a shop in Pennsylvania. He has clients that come from everywhere, and they love the work that he does. But in my mom's spare time and to make ends meet, she had to work as a nurse's aide. So I was always surrounded by healthcare. My mom would take all of us, me and my 5 siblings, to the nursing home to be able to meet with our residents, and we would watch care. And later in my life, my mom went back to school to become a nurse. And so I always thought nursing was something for me, but there was a part of me that thought, I don't know. Can I? I don't know. There were certain aspects of nursing that made me feel very uncomfortable. And again, it wasn't until my grandmother wanted to be cared for at home by my mother, who spent 6 weeks providing direct care around the clock, that I assisted her and helped her in that journey. And then I realized this is what I was meant to be. See, being a caregiver is soul-filling, purposeful work. Something happens, this beautiful exchange happens when we provide care to another being, another human being. It's an exchange of energy, but somewhere in that process, we fill up the souls of the people that we provide care with. And we have to be careful that they don't take away all the energy of the caring that we provide. And that's why connecting passion to purpose is so critically important. And as a leader, it's one of the things you can do immediately. You can really think about the people that you serve and the people that work underneath you. And think about, how do I, as that leader, make sure every single day I'm not missing an opportunity to show incredible gratitude and to be thankful that I have people that are here that are willing to do this work. And I'm going to tell you, I know there are people out there that say to me, you mean I have to thank people for showing up? Yes, you do. You 100% do. They are caregivers. And yes, that is what they are wired to do. But without them, if someone isn't caring for them, then how will they provide that care to other people? And as a leader, I'm going to challenge you to think on this journey through this podcast, your own assumptions of the way you came to this role as being a leader. I'm going to ask you to put aside many of those assumptions and to think about things from an alternative perspective. And that perspective is the person that you're leading, the person that's looking up to you, the person that's looking up to say, how is that person? How's that boss? How's that supervisor? How's that manager? How's that director? How's that VP? How are those people making me feel like the work that I'm doing, A, is important, and B, that I'm valuable, and C, that they're helping to push me along the way? And I'm going to remind you, as a leader, one of the most important competencies that you need to remember is that you are in a position to grow your talent. That means you're looking at every single person on your team for their natural gifts, skills, and talents. And you're looking at that person from that lens of saying, what is it in this person that nobody gets to see? And how, through my words of encouragement, and how, through my actions as a leader, can I break down barriers and help them to grow to be the best version of them? Now, listen, be careful when you have those types of conversations with your team members, because even when I was a consultant, I'm reminded of a very dear CEO that I worked very closely with one time, who shared with me a lesson that he had when he had a conversation with the CNA and said, I want to grow you to be a nurse. And he said, but I want to be a CNA. I love to provide direct care to residents. I don't want to be a nurse. So always remember, our job as a leader is to inspire people to their greatest potential. But we want to make sure that we're respectful, that what looks like their potential might not be something that you see. But it's still an opportunity to grow that seed and to pass on that opportunity to somebody else. Listen, the truth is as a leader and somebody who is so passionate about leadership, engagement, people, sort of the organizational psychology around it, I'm so passionate about it because someone gave me the opportunity It was those mentors, those leaders that saw something in me. And the greatest testament of your ability as a leader, I'm reminded, and I really think of a very good mentor that I had, and her name was Catherine. And I remember her saying to me once in my leadership career, you manage a team of people that are all A team players, but I want you to learn how to manage people that really are struggling, that are sort of left on the fringes, that have not been given the opportunity. And I want you to figure out, how do you tap into something in them and make them become something amazing. And when I tell you, I'm so thankful for those words, because in my development, it was an area of development I needed to close those gaps on. I needed to learn that skill, not just to look for the people that matched the way I saw the work that needed to be done, right? I was always that type of person that just was able to self-motivate myself, to be able to get things going and to be able to have enthusiasm and energy and positivity. But there are a lot of great workers in the workforce that aren't wired to be like me. And I would challenge you as leaders, I wouldn't want to be in a world with 100 of me every single day, right? That is the beauty of having people that work alongside of you and in your teams that come from all different parts of this world, that are multicultural and multi-generational, because what they bring are different experiences that are different from the way you see the world. But they still all need to be led. And that is your opportunity and call to action. So I will remind you, for those of you that are thinking, oh, this is so much work. Yes, it is. But what I also know to be true is you probably landed here because something within you spoke outwardly to say, I want to be that best leader possible. Listen, I know this as a consultant. I used to say this all the time. I still say this all the time to anyone who will listen. The person must want to be the best leader. They must want it for themselves. If I come into your organization and I teach you leadership and it's not something you care or want to do, then you're not going to do anything with that gift, with those tools and with those resources. But I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to take you back. You are a leader of people. And by nature, that is your duty and it is your responsibility, and you must get involved. You must be the best version of you. Because if you haven't figured it out, in our workforce, in healthcare, we experience challenges every day. There are not enough caregivers. There are not enough nurses. There are not enough nursing instructors to bring people in to our profession. And how different could it be for the entire healthcare system if every single one of our leaders looked at leadership from the lens of the person and said, how can I be different? What can I do to support this one CNA, this one nurse who I can tell just from walking down the hall that maybe today is not their best day? And I'm also going to challenge you as a leader that one of the things you need to think about is how you can develop expert noticing skills. Have you ever noticed that this really is skill development, this ability to be an expert noticer? It means that you are slowing down your pace just slightly, enough to be able to look at things from that different lens. It's a core competency in leadership. And in healthcare, it's absolutely required for every level in leadership. Whether you are a brand new supervisor or you are a VP or a CEO, it does not matter. You need to develop these skills because you need to see the work from the eyes of a different perspective, which is a pace that's slowed down and where you are noticing things that other people are not picking up. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm reminded, I used to do a lot of work consulting, and I loved the organization that I worked with. A huge shout out to Drive. Denise Boudreau-Scott is doing amazing work in the field of long-term care and working with leaders to make their cultures better. But I did a lot of work in leadership, and one of the things that I used to love to do was round with leaders in a facility or a center, maybe where I was doing education. Because I was always looking at things from a different lens, and I was trying to spot and point out those things that I was seeing that maybe somebody else wasn't noticing and picking up. And 9 times out of 10, it was really around people. It was around people and the interactions between one another, right? And as healthcare workers, we have to remember, as leaders of healthcare workers, I should say, we have to remember that depending on those exchanges, it can absolutely affect the way care is delivered, 1,000%, right? So we need to be attuned in, and we need to make sure as leaders that we are present. So I feel like this first episode, I want to dedicate it primarily to those 3 areas of, developing those expert noticing skills, working on your leadership presence, right? Because that's incredibly, incredibly important. And I want to touch a little bit about your ability as a leader to make connections with other people. So again, we talked a little bit about expert noticing skills, but expert noticing skills can be anything, right? It can be while you're rounding, you're really looking at things. You're looking at not only your environment to say, are things safe? How are things going? What am I noticing in terms of the energy and the flow of that unit, right? Am I noticing anything that's not working, right? Remember, we're wired to always think about what's going wrong, and we're always really good as human beings to spot the things that are going wrong. I mean, that is simple in the work that we do. That's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Think about how many times as a leader when you're rounding and you're noticing, you're finding and landing on those things that are going right instead. And then you're giving those things that are right a voice because you're connecting with that person and in gratitude to say, you know what? I noticed the way you just had that exchange with that patient. I watched you. I watched the love and the caring and the patience, and you were so kind. And boy, it made me so proud as your leader. It made me proud that you're working here. It made me believe I wish everyone could be like that. I mean, imagine what those few words would do to the caregiver that's worked a few extra shifts, a few doubles, is on call for you when you have somebody that is called out and they rush in, mostly because they need it, right? And they need that paycheck. But just imagine how those simple words can help fill up that tank again. And again, I'm going to remind you, as caregivers, the caregivers that you lead and manage, the people that are providing direct care to patients and residents in any setting as healthcare workers, they are expending a lot of energy in that because they're compassionate people. They would not be working for you if there wasn't something deep within them that was a connection to caring for another human being. I know what you're thinking. There's some of you there shaking your head saying, yeah, but you haven't seen some of the people that have worked with me. And yes, I'm saying deeply within each of us is this ability to care. That's why we are here. But pain and suffering, burden and stress can sometimes overshadow that. And as a leader, an astute leader that's really being paying attention, that is really being mindful and watching, can see that in someone. They can spot pain and suffering. And let's face it, sometimes people have gotten really good at disguising their pain and suffering, and they come in, and maybe you don't see it to the degree you see it, but recognize just by nature of the work that your team members do as healthcare workers, they are healers. And they too may need some healing. And who is better prepared to do that than their leader? I would challenge you to think of it from that lens. So presence, when I talk about presence, again, I'm talking about leadership presence, but so many times we miss the mark with presence, right? We're rushing past a group of people because we're running late for a meeting, right? Or we're worried that we have to prepare for that meeting and maybe we need those few minutes before, right? And so rather than slowing our pace, engaging, saying hello, thanking people for being here, how are you doing today? We are just beelined forward and heading off to where we need to go. I mean, that's the way our minds work. And there's nothing wrong with having that approach. What I'm asking you is to challenge those assumptions and think about how you can weave in time throughout the course of your day to do this effectively. Now, I've seen leaders in our healthcare industry do extraordinary work in this area. I mean, some of you are out there and you really are doing a remarkable job. And for all of you, you're feeling the reward of that, which is, you have an engaged workforce that knows that when they come to work, it's going to be okay. Because when they walk through those doors, they get this sense and feeling that they're cared for and that the support is there. Listen, the truth is that in healthcare, everything is unpredictable. And we will never get to predictability. I mean, I knew this as a nurse. I knew as much as I could do to build my skills. There were always going to be opportunities where I was going to have to apply those skills in a different setting, maybe with a different set of behaviors or a different set of families and the way they were coming at me to maybe request support where they felt it was lacking. So we all have this experience of not being able to manage the predictability of the work that we do. And that's totally fine. I get it. But what I'm saying is yield in through your day, weave it in those moments where you can find presence. So whether that is you come in a little bit earlier in your round and you say good morning to everybody, it is such a great day. Thank you for being here. I want to remind you, you're doing great work and there's nothing we can't do together. Right? A leader has the ability to create and form a strong team. That is within your power. And in this podcast, we'll talk and share about lots of different ways you can do that. But I feel compelled to deliver these messages that it's not just about your presence, but it's about making connections with people. And sometimes this is hard for people, especially the higher that you climb in an organization, because you're much more farther removed from people as you go up the ladder, right? But again, it's just an opportunity to form those connections with people. So we can use things in our environment to make those connections and make them whole. I always love it when people get super creative, right? I'm a huge Philadelphia Eagles girl and fan. I've worked with a lot of leaders that, have used sports teams and playoff games and just life events and things to get people inspired, right? Like, I know you're stressed, right? With the kids going back to school in September. Don't worry about it. We're going to make this as easy as it can be for you, right? We're here to support you. We're here to help you, even if it's just to spend 2 minutes to figure out how we can make your day just a little bit better. See, isn't that the best medicine we can offer as leaders? I mean, through our words and our actions. I mean, how does that change the way a person views the work that they do when the person that is supporting them is truly supporting them, is making sure every day that they understand that I appreciate you and I'm so thankful for you. But again, it has a whole trickle-down effect, right? Because somebody has to do that to you. But I'm going to remind you as a leader, and we will talk about this in the podcast, there are lots of leadership competencies that you will develop on your journey, and one of them will be resiliency despite adversity. I had to work on this competency for 3 years. I had it on my development plan as a leader, and in the most simplest terms, the way I like to look at that competency, not in all of the language that goes with it, but it really is my ability as a leader to treat every day as if it's a brand new day. It's my ability to show up and to understand that I can't control what happened yesterday, but I certainly can control how I treat today. And we're going to hit the big reset button, and we're going to start over, and today is going to be a good day. Right? You have the ability to do that as a leader, to inspire people, to get them excited about work, and to get them charged up. That is in your control. And I'm going to challenge you through this podcast to think of all the subtle ways that you are going to do that. And I'm going to read things from my journal through the podcast. We're going to share some of those reflections of how I felt as that nurse pushing the med cart, right? And how it forced in me this journey of figuring out, and again, not knowing that these words would be the secret, which would be this important mission, which is to heal the hearts of those that care for people. That is our responsibility. So all of this, putting these practices into action, it's going to speak to your credibility as a leader. It's going to speak to your ability to be compassionate. I mean, the field in of itself is full of what we would expect of everybody, to show compassion. So we must look inward and say, how am I that compassionate leader that can really understand what is going on maybe with a person or a process or a system or something? And how do I look at this from a different lens and offer comfort and offer a listening ear and offer encouragement and offer inspiration? And again, I'm going to remind you, that's a job of a leader. If somebody hasn't told you that, that is the job of a leader. You are that person that makes the difference in the way a person views the work that they do. And the most exemplary leaders are those that really get that connection. They understand that human piece of it, and they recognize the importance of it. And again, I'm just going to remind you, it's the simplest way to show that you care for other people. So if you found yourself here in this podcast today, it was probably that you were called to this podcast. But I'm going to encourage you to stay with it. Join each week as we talk about a new topic, and we talk about the importance of that when it comes to leadership. But I'm going to challenge you as we leave today for you to go back and think in your quiet reflection, how am I using those expert noticing skills to really look around and spot those caregivers that might need some healing words that will make a difference in the way that they work? How might I be showing my presence? And what can I do differently to alter maybe my schedule or the way I'm interacting with people so that I can show presence? And how can I focus and concentrate on forming connections? Because it's the connections that will matter in the end of the day. It will be the difference in the person that will be showing up for you when you need them the most. Because it's authentic and it's genuine and it's coming from a place of love and compassion, which is their leader that is there to support them. So thank you so much for the work that you do as a leader of healthcare workers. I know this work is not easy. I know firsthand it's not easy, but I also know it is an unimaginable opportunity for so many of you to really focus on doing one thing different every day to make a difference and keeping that in the front of your mind. Listen, if you don't hear it enough, thank you for the great work that you do every single day. And I look forward to seeing you at our future podcast. Goodbye, everyone.